𝗃𝗂𝗀𝗊.
Cool!
Hey everyone, it's 𝗃𝗂𝗀𝗊𝗀, and I'm back. Yes, I'm back. I'm here. I'm ready to talk our Lord and Savior Sonic, the Blue Blur. I could talk about why I've been gone for so long, but y'all don't want to hear that. Y'all are here for Sonic. Y'all know the drill. Like, y'all don't care about that other stuff. I can talk about that stuff another time, but today I want to talk about Sonic X Shadow Generations because it's very similar to my last Sonic video, the one where I was catching up with the movie news, where because it's been a while since I've last talked about this specific part of Sonic, there's a lot I have to catch up on and give my thoughts and opinions on technically, but because it's Sega, you know that they're being vague about a bunch of elements to the actual game, so technically there's not all that much to talk about, but let's go ahead and get right into it. So my initial thoughts on Sonic X Shadow Generations were obviously, kind of mixed, because while I do like Sonic Generations, I do think it's one of the best Sonic games because of its polish, because of its great level design and all that other stuff. I just was not happy to see that this is the big next Sonic game project that we have to look forward to, because it's basically more generations, like more of the Generations version of Green Hill, more of the Generations version of Chemical Plant, like more of these stages that Sega has just been making us go through over and over and over again, and I've just been so tired of it. But with Sonic X Shadow Generations, it's clear that they're doing a lot of interesting stuff and diving into areas that they haven't really dove into with Sonic in a while, because obviously, you know me, I'm crazy about 2000 Sonic, and I think that's like close to like basically the peak of this brand. Like, obviously it wasn't perfect, like the 2000s era of Sonic had more than a few blunders, trust me, especially in retrospect, where there's some games that I don't see as highly as I once did, but there's definitely still a lot of games in that era that I just still think are on a high pedestal that a lot of recent Sonic games have just not come close to. But focusing in on Sonic X Shadow Generations, how is this game looking in terms of its quality? Well, first things first, I want to talk about the stage lineup, because I didn't really know what to expect with Shadow Generations. Like, my initial fear right out the jump was, okay, first things first, I want to see if this is going to be like, an actual campaign first and foremost. Because what I don't want it to be is something like that Knights DLC BS with Sonic Lost World. Because y'all remember that they were hyping this Knights DLC for Sonic Lost World, and it was the whole reason why they had that stupid Deadly 6 edition thing that I bought. Yeah, I was such a sucker for that. And what it ended up being, it was basically one montage stage, and that was it. Like, it literally contributed to nothing else with the game. You were better off just waiting for like the free updates with like the Yoshi stage and the Zelda stage, because those had some better quality than the actual final product. But in the case of Sonic X Shadow Generations, it looks like they're putting a lot more work into this whole Shadow campaign than I initially expected, because they revealed quite a few interesting new elements about it. So we've seen 3 stages, although technically we've possibly seen 4, because we've seen that weird trippy city stage, which might be 𝗿𝗏𝗄𝗡. It could be 𝗿𝗏𝗄𝗡, I have no freaking idea. But they've really focused in on 3 specific stages lately, which is the Space Colony Arc stage. Now, we don't know if this is Final Chase or Final Rush. I've seen some people say, oh, it's Final Rush, and I've seen some people say it's Final Chase, but either way, it's one of the Space Colony Arc stages from the past, so that's one of the major stages, and it makes sense because the Arc is a big part of Shadow's character, and I just hope that they do that stage justice for sure. But then in the reveal, I think it was Summer Games Fest that first revealed these later stages, and I don't even want to get into that, the whole Summer Games Fest madness. Whoo boy, I could get into a whole ramble on that. But focusing in on these new stages, we have Kingdom Valley, and it's either Rail Canyon or Bullet Station, but one of those stages from Sonic Heroes. And these were actually some hype new stage inclusions, because it's stages that, for once, again, it's stages that are not reused to death or feel like reiterative. Like, part of the reason why I get on stages like Green Hill and Chemical Plant so much is we've just seen them time and time again. And I've seen some people say, well, then why are you getting hyped for stages like Kingdom Valley and Rail Canyon and Bullet Station or whatever? Because it's stages we haven't played a million freaking times. That's why I'm very interested to see these stages, and it's actually really cool to see them in HD. Like visually, you can definitely tell that they look better than their original counterparts. Now, obviously, in terms of whether they're going to play better than their original counterparts, that's something that possibly remains to be seen. But yeah, that's pretty much all we've seen in terms of the stages so far. Now, there was a worry that this is possibly it. Like, this is probably all we're going to get in terms of this Shadow campaign. But funny enough, we did get a post from someone working on the project that there are more than 3 stages. So that's good. I'm glad that this Shadow campaign is not so short to the point where it's like this pathetic thing. However, I do have a sneaking suspicion that this campaign is still not going to be as lengthy as, say, like the main Sonic Generations campaign. Like, yeah, maybe it'll be more than 3 stages, but what if it's like 4 stages? I don't think it would be that bad per se, but I do think it's not gonna be as long as a lot of people are hyping up, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see, you know? I'm just glad that they're putting a lot more effort into it when it comes to the stage stuff than I was initially expecting. I was initially expecting that this could possibly be basically a nostalgia montage stage, one thing that just kind of has not that much effort into it, but I'm at least glad that they're putting effort in terms of the stage designs and recreating these locations that are obviously important to the history of Shadow the Hedgehog as a character. Although if there is one thing I do have to rant about when it comes to these stages, we've heard bits of their music and man, I'm not the biggest fan of the music remixes because a lot of them are leaning into that EDM direction that Sonic's been leaning into since Forces and really doubled down on in Frontiers, and man, I just do not like the current EDM direction of Sonic music. I can get that is something I can make its own video, but to summarize my thoughts on that, I don't hate EDM inherently. Like, I'm very tolerant of a lot of music genres. Like, I'm a guy that has some freaking country songs on my playlist, even if they're like corny as heck. But I just think that the way Sonic handles EDM sometimes just feels so try-hard and cheap. Like, it leans into that dubstep 2010s cool like EDM. Like, it's not very stylized and fitting to Sonic. It just feels very lazy in my opinion. But when it's stylized and it has some more interesting elements to it, like some of the songs in Frontiers did, then I can see why EDM kind of worked. Especially with that game and its whole cyberspace theme, I think sometimes the EDM actually benefited that game. But when they're remixing these classic stages that add more like rock elements that leaned more into the rock genre, that's where I'm like, okay, can we tone that down please? Like, or can we get an option for the original music? Because I do not want to hear loud dubstep while I'm trying to replay these stages in HD, bro. I just want to hear something resembling the original music. I guess I like the Kingdom Valley remix. That one is not so bad, but like, the others are kind of like whatever to me. So yeah, those are the main things everyone's talking about when it comes to Shadow Generations. Now, are we possibly going to get old bosses? We don't really have any indications of that yet, but there was something that I'm going to talk about later that could indicate something with old characters having a big role in the Shadow campaign. But next up, we're going to talk about some other interesting things that they've brought into this game. So one thing that we know that they're changing up in terms of gameplay is that Shadow is going to have chaos powers that give him unique elements in the stages. Whoa! They actually remembered Shadow's chaos powers instead of making him basically a Sonic clone. That's crazy. But yeah, I'm really glad that they're actually utilizing Shadow's chaos powers in his gameplay, because it just felt like forever since they've remembered them. Like, we're seeing Chaos Spear again, we're obviously seeing Chaos Control, and maybe we'll see Chaos Blast too, and some of the other abilities he's had in the past. Like, I just think that it's cool they're remembering the elements about Shadow that actually make him a unique character. Like, this is doing him a lot of justice. And another element that they're bringing in that's that was a little more weird to accept is that Shadow has wings. Shadow has wings. I don't know if I've talked about it on this channel yet, but Shadow now has wings, and apparently these wings are because of his Black Arms DNA. So they are doubling down on, you know, Shadow the Hedgehog, the 2005 game, being canon, and he has his Black Arms DNA, and apparently he's going to be able to tap into that and gain new powers. And one of the powers is that he is going to literally grow wings. And it is, at first, it's definitely something that I was like, that is weird as hell. Like that definitely feels like an edgy transformation Sega would have done in the 2000s for sure. But that's also kind of part of why I like it. Like, it's definitely something that makes me like, I don't know about that. But it's just something so bold of them to do that I actually kind of like it. Like, I don't think it's the worst thing they could have done with Shadow. Like, obviously, a lot of people were probably expecting that they would give him his guns again, which I had no faith in that. There's no way we're probably ever going to see Shadow with a gun again. I'll be extremely surprised if they prove me wrong on that one. But yeah, the Black Arms powers, if there's more than just the wings, I have no idea what they're going to do with that. But there's something that I'm open-minded about. The next thing in terms of the gameplay is that there's actually going to be a white space hub world that connects these stages apparently. Like, Shadow is going to have this hub world that takes inspiration from the open zones from Sonic Frontiers. Now, Sonic Frontiers, ooh boy, one day I'm gonna have to talk about that game. But in terms of what this could do for this game, honestly, I don't have too high expectations that this open zone for the Shadow campaign is going to be that in depth, because I imagine if they're already, trying to make this campaign feel meaty with the stages as is, I don't think they're going to go too crazy with this open world, especially when you look at the white space hub world for Sonic Generations. That's not exactly the most in-depth hub world in Sonic history, so I don't think this is going to be too crazy, but they've confirmed that there will be some interesting elements with this hub world, so I guess hopefully they deliver on that, but my expectations are certainly not high for that. Alright, and before I get into this, one more big thing with Shadow Generations that I'm sure a lot of you are interested to hear my thoughts on, I want to talk about a few more minor, not so important elements when it comes to this Shadow Generations thing. So, first things first, we got confirmation that this game actually has some DLC skins. We have a freaking Sonic Adventure skin and a Classic Sonic skin that are going to be pre-order bonuses or something, I think. And then we also have this insane deep cut through a 𝗕𝗲𝗹𝗃 skin for Shadow. Now, for those of you who don't know, that's basically beta Shadow. That's Shadow's beta design, and it was crazy to see them reference that. Like, it's very similar to how they had the bunnies design for Sonic with Sonic Superstars, I think it was. So apparently they're going to be doing more of that and looking into more of the beta and weird, like, kind of fan hyped up elements of Sonic, which is very, very interesting. But also kind of worrying because there's some elements of like Sonic fan characters, Sonic beta characters that I would rather they keep locked in the vault, to put it lightly. But there are some actually interesting things that I wouldn't mind as like a bonus skin or like a minor reference in a Sonic game. So that really shows that the team are actually putting in a lot of effort to like paying attention to the history of the characters. So I can respect that. Next up is of course the box art, which obviously this has been like a controversy, surprisingly. Like, a lot of people have been clowning the initial American box art, where it's basically those reused renders from the original Sonic Generations games and then Shadow's just kind of slapped on there. It looks kind of uncanny. But then you look at the Japanese box art and it is like one of the most raw looking Sonic art pieces in a hot minute. Like, it looks so raw for no reason. Like, why is this not the default box art? I was asking. That is until out of nowhere they actually confirmed that if you pre-order the game, I think the Japanese box art is going to come with it as like a reversible cover. So I'm very glad that they listened to the feedback on that. Like, beforehand, when I was recording this video, I was about to go in on that and say that, man, they should have just stuck with the Japanese box art. And honestly, I still think that should have been the default one, but I'm at least glad there's some option to add it to the game. And I guess the last thing to talk about with Shadow Generations is the story, which we have confirmation on what the story setup is going to be. And Izuku was very weird about it and said that this is apparently going to take place at the same time as Sonic Generations. And I'm sorry, I gotta be that guy that like goes super in on like whining about Sonic's story, because man, that makes no sense. Like, because Shadow is a boss in Sonic Generations, and he presumably fights Sonic for no real clear reason in the story. And apparently during all of that, he's also going to be going through his own adventure where he's chasing down Black Doom. And I just can't stress enough how that doesn't make too much sense. Because, like, why is this story being a part of another story that already has so much else going on? Like, that would be like saying, like, Bowser's Fury took place during 3D World, which, no, it's very clear that Bowser's Fury took place either before or after 3D World and some other point far away from the main game's events. But for some reason, apparently this is going to be taking place at the same time. So what the heck is going to happen? Is it going to end with, you know, him getting back to Sonic in time to deliver his iconic line, "You've got this, Sonic"? So yeah. Man, story with Sonic is just something that grinds me sometimes. But I guess we'll see how they execute it and what they do in terms of which characters they bring in to be a part of this, because obviously we already know Shadow's gonna have to confront Black Doom again. And my only hope when it comes to Black Doom is I hope they portray him in a similar way to in Shadow the Hedgehog, where he's clearly trying to guide Shadow to the dark side. I don't want him to be this mindless monster that Shadow just kind of beats up throughout his campaign. I think that would be extremely lame. Like, I want him to actually have some cutscenes where he's talking with Shadow. But we'll see what happens in terms of that front. And I guess the last thing I could talk about is if there's possibly anything new to Sonic Generations itself. And we know that there's going to apparently be this new thing with 𝗬𝗨 missions. So once again, they're remembering that the 𝗬𝗨 exists, and some people were even getting hyped and saying, "Oh, are they bringing back a 𝗬𝗨 garden?" Which, you know, dang well they're not. For some reason, like, they refuse to bring back one of the most requested things when it comes to Sonic. You know how Sega does. But I guess these 𝗬𝗨 missions are something new for the Sonic Generations portions, but I just think it's a little sad that there's really possibly nothing new gonna be added on that front. Like, the gameplay on the Sonic Generations portion looks pretty much dead the same. Like, there's no new stages on that portion. We don't know if they're gonna add any new songs or anything like that. Like, that portion of the game looks like it's pretty much just gonna be dead the same. Like, we don't even know if they're gonna, like, change the visuals or frame rate or whatever else, and it just feels like so lazy compared to so many other studios, bro. Like, it's kind of pathetic. But I imagine the reason why they're not changing too much about the game is they're trying not to put themselves in another Colors Ultimate situation, which we know how that went. Oh boy, but let's not get into that. But to end this off, I want to talk about something that Sega was really hyping up during this whole Shadow Generations thing, and that is Dark Beginnings. So they've been talking about how they're apparently going to be doing this animation to promote Shadow Generations, which obviously, because they just love doing animation promotion stuff with Sonic. Like, at this point, this has basically become a staple with the franchise. And obviously, I've had mixed thoughts with them. Sometimes I think that they're actually extremely cool and nice things that parallel the games. But other times, I feel that they could have been something that actually could have helped the games themselves. Like, why are we putting these raw animations out on YouTube to just casually sit there when these are something that could enhance the gaming experiences? It's something I've been very mixed on lately, and that gets into a wider discussion regarding Sonic multimedia, and that's something I don't even want to get into right now. But when it comes to Sonic Dark Beginnings, they obviously had like a whole panel about it, talking about all the stuff that it's going to do apparently, and it revealed some interesting stuff. Like, for example, they showed that this timeline apparently, let me pull it up right now. They showed this timeline apparently of the history of Shadow the Hedgehog, and this pissed people off because of just like, do I even have to explain why this annoys me so much? Like, because they have Sonic Adventure 2, obviously, that's like his origin. They have Sonic Battle, then Sonic X is on here, which, okay, I guess, because I guess Sonic X was a big part in more and more people knowing about Shadow. So whatever. Sonic Heroes, yeah, Shadow the Hedgehog, but of course, they don't have Sonic 06 here, and it's just like, come on, y'all. Are y'all really still acting scared to reference Sonic 06, even though you literally have a Sonic 06 stage in Shadow Generations? You have Kingdom Valley there, so what are you doing? Why is that not on the timeline? Oh, but Nooks, it's a bad game. Oh, but Nooks, it reset itself. It's not canon. Kingdom Valley is sitting right there in Shadow Generations. Not canon, my foot. So come on, y'all, stop being like scaredy cats and reference that game. Like, at this point, Sonic 06 is basically canon. Like, every damn thing in this franchise feels like it's canon almost at a point, but whatever, man. Whatever. Ugh. And it especially annoys me because they said, oh, but we don't have room on the timeline, so that's why 06 isn't on here. But like, why in the hell do you have the IDW comics on here? And especially Sonic Boom and Sonic Prime. Like, what, bro? Why is Sonic Boom on here? Who is still trying to make Sonic Boom a thing? My God, like, this is something that pisses me off to no avail. This is one of those things that, like, normal people obviously shrug this off, but someone like me, it just gets on my nerves, and I sound like a crazy person talking about it, so I'm sorry, but like, man, it pisses me off. Someone actually made a funny, I think it was Ultima, he made a funny comment saying like, oh, what would Silva's timeline look like then if they're not going to reference 06? And the mock-up one he made was absolutely hilarious, but I'm getting off track. Now let's get back to talking about Dark Beginnings. And Dark Beginnings is extremely interesting because I remember I was offline for a lot of the panel because I wasn't expecting much from it. But then I log back on and I see the teaser poster. And I'm like, oh hey, Rouge and Omega, again, they're acknowledging that Team Dark is a thing. You know, Shadow does indeed have friends. Stop making up that BS that he doesn't when he clearly does. It's a big part of his character arc, so that's cool. And then ML is there. From Sonic Battle, ML is casually standing there. I'm like, huh? They remembered you exist, ML? Like, that was the funniest thing to casually see when I opened Twitter. Like, why are you here, ML? And apparently the reason why is ML is going to be a big part of the Dark Beginnings animation, where at some point, ML is going to go rogue, like it was implied in Sonic Battle, because in Sonic Battle, basically, Gerald discovered the Gizoids, ML, basically, and what would end up becoming Gemel. But when he initially, like, was working on them, they went rogue at some point, and he had to do something to try and stop them. And apparently, Dark Beginnings is going to say that Shadow was someone who stopped ML's rampage. But some Sonic, like, really crazy Sonic lore enthusiasts have pointed out that this is technically a retcon because Gemel, or Gerald, not Gemel, Gerald discovered the Gizoids a little bit before he finished up with Shadow. So technically Gemel's rampage would have happened before Shadow was even a thing. But I don't think this is a bad retcon at all because, like, how would Gerald stop a rampaging ML then? Like, what did he specifically do? I think it's not that bad of a change to say that Shadow was the reason why Gemel's rampage was stopped. So I think that's fine. Especially because, again, this is like not something that doesn't affect the greater franchise. This is like Sonic Battle territory we're talking about. Like, oh my God, I can't even believe they're actually referencing this game again. Oh my Lord. But like, this is also something that makes me go, because while the Shadow and Gemel fight could be insanely cool, man, this like kind of justifies GUN rating the arc, because if Shadow was having these crazy anime DBZ looking battles on the Space Colony arc, then no wonder they rated it, because all this crazy stuff is happening with like the giant death dinosaur, the bio lizard locked in the basement, Hedgehog is out here fighting robots to death. Like, what is going on this ship? So in a way, I can understand GUN rating the arc at this point, and it's kind of messed up, but also kind of hilarious to me. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on everything thus far when it comes to Shadow Generations. We're probably going to get more random updates scattered on Twitter. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if while I'm trying to edit this freaking video, they reveal something like, oh my God, that always happens to me. It like makes my stuff outdated and it gets on my nerves. But for now, I think I've said everything I've needed to when it comes to Sonic X Shadow Generations. What are my overall thoughts on how the game could turn out? I don't know really. Like, I think that the game will be decent, at least I hope so. Like, I guess the Shadow Generations portion is definitely something I'm a little hesitant to say could be amazing, because obviously y'all know my track record with Sonic at this point. But if all else fails, I guess at least the Sonic Generations portion should be okay. If they don't mess it up on some Sonic Colors Ultimate BS, then that portion will be fine, I guess, and that'll be good to have, you know, just again, like, I know it's Generations again, and I shouldn't be buying it again, but I don't know, I really want to play this Shadow Generations game and just see what it's all about. I'll probably get it for Switch, because I already have Generations on PC, and I don't want to mess with all my mods and all that other stuff. So hey, Sonic Generations on the go. But obviously we know the Switch version might not be optimized the best because Sega isn't the best with that. Like, people act like the Switch can't handle anything these days. Like, because we're coming up on the Switch 2, people are acting like the Switch is this machine that just can't handle any game at this point. But come on, y'all, Sonic Generations is so freaking old. It should be able to run Generations fine. But because it's Sega and their optimization is not the best, who knows how the heck that port is going to turn out. So I'm going to wait and see if it even runs well on Switch. But fingers crossed that if it doesn't, we get a Switch 2 port, maybe. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to give it a like. Be sure to follow my other social media in the description for more content and updates. And that's pretty much it. This has been 𝗃𝗂𝗀𝗶𝗰, and I'm out. Peace.